You know, it's really breathtaking as we watch this together, Martha. It's a new dawn, really a resetting of our relationship with the Middle East. And it's not just the investment, it's President Trump doing things no other president has done, whether it be direct talks with Iran, Syria, the removing of the sanctions, whether it be Kashmir, intervening there. And now here you see him at the UAE, trillions of dollars of investment, 1.4 trillion in this very country.
It's astonishing, the shakeup that we're seeing. It's as if President Trump is on, overdrive as he moves into all of these areas, shaking up relationships in the Middle East and bringing prosperity and analogizing that with peace. And this, as you said, Kayleigh, is clearly the Trump doctrine. I saw just in the last, at the end of Harris's show, these clips of President Biden, and you have to feel for him in those moments, falling asleep at these meetings. And I look at the energy of the executive that we see from President Trump, and it is it's clear that he is exhilarated by these moments, that he wants to keep going. He said earlier today, well, maybe I'll go to Turkey tomorrow. If Putin shows up, then we'll just stop in Turkey on the way home. But the list of accomplishments is absolutely stunning in terms of recognizing Syria, ending the sanctions with Syria, starting to deal with a person there who not too long ago, we would have offered $10 million for information on this former al-Qaeda-linked terrorist who's now running Syria. But look at what Ben Rhodes is saying, former Obama advisor. He said, it's so clearly the right decision on Syria. I don't know why Joe Biden didn't do this. And just quickly, he went on to say, sometimes you just have to try something different. And that is clearly what we're watching at just an incredibly fast pace here in the Middle East.
And let's listen in. This is our national anthem about to play ahead of the UAE anthem just after that. Harris, they will play the UAE anthem right now. They will have a private meeting, and then we'll hear brief remarks from the president.
Right.
But in that private meeting, you wonder, what does he say in the private meetings versus the public? He's been to some countries like Qatar, where obviously they have direct ties to Hamas, Saudi Arabia, the human rights record, and you wonder if the tone behind the scenes is a different one maybe than the public-facing facade.
Well, one thing they're going to talk about is that $1.4 trillion, because President Trump told us that. He said, look, they have a framework for commitment on that as investment in the United States, but they haven't worked out exactly the details of how that money will be spent. So no doubt they'll touch on that. This is the Emir Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and that presidential palace sits in the center of Abu Dhabi. It is beautiful. It is a distance away from Dubai, where you see a lot more Westerners doing business there. And one thing that is fascinating about the UAE is where it sits on the Persian Gulf, right across from Iran, and how many, when you go there, how many Iranians, the women, you can only see their eyes, how many of them are infused, at least in the economic part of this culture. President Trump needs to build a coalition, if you will, of really people who Biden didn't have access to in that region, to do the type of deals that he's doing that benefit America, but also to reshape what that part of the world looks like. And so this is an important stop. Geographically it is, and the Emir with the 7 Emirates is a fairly new grouping of those nation states, if you want to call them that. They're very tiny, actually. But what's interesting about their relationship is a last stop. He's not, as far as we know, going to go to Turkey now. We just heard that Zelensky is only sending a coalition on behalf of him now, a delegation. So he didn't get the deal the way he may have wanted it to end the Ukrainian and Russian war, but he's in that conversation. He said, if I'm not at the table, it doesn't get done. If he's not at the table, it doesn't get done, the Abraham Accords. Biden didn't touch that. One of the few things that he put into place as President Trump, he didn't touch it. Now he wants it to grow. The UAE is important for that. Saudi Arabia is. This trip is so critically important for the future. And such a huge percentage of population, both in the UAE and around the region of the Middle East, is under the age of 25. It's all about the future. And it looks like we're going to make that part of the world great again in terms of its young people. He's doing the best he can, and he's representing us well in this point.
And Emily, what our viewers are watching, this is the review of the troops, which we knew was going to happen. They're going to introduce the delegations, which there will be a number of people from the UAE, a number of regional princes. In addition to the U.S. delegation, you'll see Susie Wiles there. You'll see some of the deputy chiefs of staff, Howard Lutnick, Pete Hegseth, Scott Bessent, among other cabinet officials. Something Martha said, I think, was very important. She talked about Ben Rhodes, and she talked about some of the Biden administration assessments of this trip. They've been really fascinating. They came out in Axios, Emily. Here's a Biden administration official. Gosh, I wish I could work for an administration that moves this quickly. Another Biden administration official, when his personal instincts, Trump's, coincide with the national interest, it's pretty remarkable how quickly he can move. And then yet another on Syria. It's so clear it was the right decision. Why didn't Joe Biden do this? There are about a half dozen quotes. And it's just breathtaking to think about the past administration watching this and thinking, whoa, we didn't keep up.
Well, I think there are 77 million Americans who aren't surprised whatsoever. This is exactly who we know President Trump to be and who they voted for. And I loved what you said about the New World Order, because I want to point out the narrative and the coverage that's occurring in the mainstream media and on the left. So as we speak, as we are showing this historic moment, historic developments in the realm of foreign diplomacy and in economic interest on the global stage, the other networks are covering the SCOTUS arguments for birthright citizenship. All last night, all the talking heads were obsessed with the Qatar jet, the gift, and the potential for that, and talking about the king and the dictator and all the things. And it just sort of blows my mind that the paradigm shift that we are witnessing in real time, which has such fundamental implications for truly every nation out there, as we've talked about, to sort of reject after all of these decades the geopolitical sort of incursion model, leaving our blood and treasure totally separating business and economic interests from any type of diplomacy possible. And now we come in with a breath of fresh air that is President Trump. With the administration, he has surrounded himself by those brilliant, like-minded individuals in service to the American people for the first time, that says we are here to exhibit peace through strength and to invest in relationships that will have generational impact. We release these chains, these decades-long sanctions of inheritance, and see you not for what you've done in the past, but for what we might achieve in the future. That is so historic. And unfortunately, this mainstream media and what we're hearing out of some Democratic congressmen, or lawmakers, it is leaving the forest for the trees. So I'm glad those individuals in the Obama and Biden administrations are sort of shocked by this, that they're at least noting the accomplishment and the speed with which it's occurring. But certainly I hope the media gets on board, because every American deserves to see what an incredible evolution we are seeing in the genesis right now.
So you see right here, this looks to be Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff. One of them, they're speaking to the UAE prince. It's quite funny. I believe it was the Saudi prince. This is a little color for you. There was some reporting that he was introduced to Deputy Chief of Staff James Blair, Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, and the next Deputy Chief of Staff. And he said, how many Deputy Chief of Staffs do you have? So really lighthearted, friendly relationships, Charles, between these foreign leaders and our president. Kevin O'Leary said something interesting to me this week. He said, Kayleigh, watch this UAE trip closely. This is the heart of artificial intelligence. He told me he was just in the UAE. He went on and on about this amazing AI development for health. And he said a lot of the business leaders on this trip are here for this moment in this country with these developments.
Yeah, a couple of days ago when we started this, when this started off in Saudi Arabia, 8 publicly traded company CEOs went with President Trump. 7 of their stocks went through the roof that day.
Wow.
So it just sort of underscores. But what I think is so much, it's so important about starting here is you go back to Dubai. And why did they change course? Well, they knew they were going to run out of oil at some point. And they had to decide what they wanted to be. They wanted to be a center for commerce, for economics. And guess what? I went over there. There weren't any Americans. So someone said, well, go, this is nice, but go to Abu Dhabi. And that's when I saw the palace. I mean, it blew me away. And the whole place blew me away. Like, what the heck? This was rivaling Manhattan, right?
Yeah.
But we don't hear about that. And this, I think, is part of this sort of notion that we're going to have a second American century. I think if you're going to have that, you have to have Pax Americana. After World War II, the world was decimated. It was American peace that kept it together. But this time, instead of keeping together with force, we keep it together through economic prosperity.
Yeah, I can't get over all the white marble and Qatar that President Trump marveled at. It was
President Trump really likes it too.
I'm with him on
He's
that.
like, as a builder, I got to tell you, I'm very impressed with these buildings.
As a very low-scale buyer, it's very hard to find. All right.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.